Hello and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial I'm going to be sharing with you a continuation video of how to sew a conical corset with a gong sleeve. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So after I'm done, this is what I have, and this is where we stopped in our last tutorial. So the next step is to go ahead to make the back part and go ahead to iron out your pattern. And now at this point I'll go ahead to fold this in and I'm going to stitch it up at that side. So we're moving over to the back pattern, and this is my fabric. So on this part I'm going to go ahead to stitch it up with my lining. I'm going to turn it with my lining, so do not stitch the upper part and the lower part, and also at the armhole area. So after I'm done turning, I'm going to be placing this on that nipple to nipple divided by 2. That is where you marked it, and you're going to place this. So if you notice, what I ironed at this part is going out, so I'll go ahead and still iron it so that it will be relaxed. Now I'm going to pin, and I'm going to be stitching with 1/2 inch just to hold this down at this point. So I'm done stitching. This is what I have. So on this part I'll be using a loop. The only difference from what we have at the thumbnail is at this part, instead of stitching it up and inserting your eyelet, will be creating a loop for the back. So this is fabric. This is a fabric that I cut out, which is about 2 inches, and I made a little loop from it. Now I'm going to pin it down. I'll be using a distance of 1.5 inches away from each loop. I'll also go ahead and place, and I'm going to pin it down. After pinning that, I'm going to also pin the next one, and I'm going to still measure that same 1.5 inches. So I'm going to use this to measure to the end of the fabric. So after you're done pinning to the end, I have about 5 loops. You're going to stitch the sides, the both sides and the upper part, then leaving the under part open. So this is what I have about 5 loops. Now I'm going to be creating a boning channel. I'm going to create the first boning channel after the loop, and then at the center, and I'll go ahead to fold this in and stitch. So after creating your boning channel, make sure that you pass your boning through it. So this is the back pattern. I have 2 at this side. So now we are going to join it to the shoulder of the front pattern. Now I'm going to place and flip it this way, and I'll also go ahead and repeat this on the other side. I'll be stitching with 1/2 inch at the shoulder of the dress. So after joining, this is what I have, and now we are going to go ahead to cut out the sleeve. So this is the fabric I'm using for this sleeve. So now the width of the sleeve is about 11 inches, and the length I used 13, but I went ahead to reduce it to 10 when I was done sewing because the sleeve was a bit long. So now I'll mark my sleeve cap height, and I'm going to connect. So after connecting, I'm just going to go ahead to cut this off, and this is what I have. So before I started sewing the sleeve, I went ahead to reduce it because what I have was a little bigger than what was on the thumbnail. So now this is my lining, and what I have here is a PEPLUM stay, not a gum stay. A PEPLUM stay is actually thicker than a gum stay. So I'm going to be ironing this on the lining. If you don't have a PEPLUM stay, go ahead and use a collar gum, any stay that is very strong and stiff. So now I'll go ahead and iron this on it. And when you're cutting your lining, make sure your lining is about 1 inch or 1.5 inches shorter than your main fabric. But before I go ahead and iron this, I'm going to cut it out. So after I'm done, this is what I have. So at the upper part, I went ahead to trim out 1/2 inch on top, because when you're joining it to your sleeve, it's going to be too bulky. So now you want to place and stitch with 1/2 inch at the lower part. So after you're done doing this, you're going to pleat and leave about 1 or 1/2 inch. That's the reason why your lining is shorter than the main fabric. After this, This is how your sleeve is meant to be, but you're going to be doing it from the back. Go ahead and measure about 1 inch, or if you use 1.5, you'll be measuring 1 inch, and make sure that you notch this part or trim it off. If not, it will be too stiff. So now I'll be leaving about 1/2 inch this way, and I'll stitch the sides of my sleeve at both sides with 1/2 inch, repeating what I did on the other side. So after I'm done sewing and I've gone ahead to iron out my sleeve, this is what it's looking like. Now we are going to attach it to the dress. All you have to do is pin the center, and you're going to gather it at the sleeve. So after gathering it, you're going to be repeating it on both sides of the sleeve and stitch with 1/2 inch. And please, when I was joining the lower part, I forgot to mention that you have to really also trim out the excess. If not, your back pattern will be bulky. So now, to shape my pattern, I'm going to go ahead to place it together. So remember that we trimmed out the sewing allowance, so what we had left was 1 inch. After turning up with 1/2 inch, you're going to be left with only 1/2 inch. So at the sleeve, I shaped with 1 inch. Getting to the armhole, I added my armhole circumference, and after doing that, I stitched with 1/2 inch all the way around. So while you were turning up your pattern, if you did not trim very well, you're going to be having issues at this part. If not, your corset will be very bulky at the ending, and it will be very difficult for you to turn. So now we're moving to the skirt pattern, and I've gone ahead to cut out my skirt pattern with the pattern we have. And remember, we are going to be adding 1 inch to the waistline for the darts. And when we were cutting this pattern, we didn't add our dart intake. To stitch up your dress, you're going to open the skirt. So I will use the skirt pattern to illustrate, and I'm going to go ahead to iron it out also. So now you're going to go ahead to place your lining, and you're going to stitch with 1/2 inch. After stitching with 1/2 inch, you're going to be creating a turn up effect at the lower part, and after that you're going to stitch the sides with 1/2 inch. So now I've gone ahead to stitch my skirt, and this is what I have, and I've also ironed it out. So now, to mark your dart, you're going to fold your skirt into two this way, and you're going to place and mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2 and mark. So for the dart intake, I'm going to be using 6 inches for the depth. And after marking this, you're also going to mark it on the other side. Mark 3.5 inches. That is your nipple to nipple. So if your nipple to nipple is not 3.5, you are going to use whatever your nipple to nipple is, divide it by 2, and you're going to measure 6 inches, and that is where your dart is going to stop. So this is my back pattern, and I've also gone ahead to turn it up, and what I'm going to do right now is to go ahead to mark my zipper allowance out first. So to mark your dart intake for the back, first of all, mark out your zipper allowance, measure your nipple to nipple, and get the depth of the dart. So now I've gone ahead also to go and stitch down my dart on the sewing machine, and this is what I have. Now I'll be joining my skirt pattern together. To join my skirt pattern, I'm going to go ahead to pin it together and start taking measurements. Now I've pinned down my skirt pattern, and to impute my measurement, I'm going to place mark 7 inches for my hip measurement. So for a much taller person, you can make use of 8 inches. So now on our pattern, when we were drafting, we just added 1.5 inches. So by the time we used 1/2 inch on the both sides, so for turn up allowance, so we'll be having 1 inch left on both sides of my skirt, and I'll go ahead to mark that. And after that, at the hip point, I'm going to also go ahead to impute my measurement. But after imputing your measurement, check what you have. Make sure that it's rhyming with what is on your waist. On the hip point, I'm going to measure my hip circumference, and I'm going to be imputing my measurements at that point. So after I'm done doing that, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to connect from my waist to the hip point of my pattern. After I'm done connecting, on the lower part I'm just going to go ahead and measure about 1.5 inches, and on this point also I'm going to measure 1.5. So if you want your skirt pattern to be a bit fitted, go ahead and use 2 inches. After I'm done shaping, this is what I have, and I'll measure my waist round. So at your waist round, what you're supposed to have is your waist circumference plus extra 2 inches, which is my waist is 28 plus 1 inch for zipper allowance at both sides. I have 30 inches on the dot. I'll be using that 30 inches to go ahead and cut out my skirt band, and the width of the band will be about 4 to 5 inches. So this is what I have. I used 4 inches and I went ahead to iron it to make it more relaxed. Now I added extra half inch on both sides, making my band 31. So now I'm going to go ahead to attach this. So there are different methods of attaching band to the skirt. This is more like the easiest, and I'm going to go ahead and use half inch to attach my skirt, the band to the skirt. So after I'm done attaching the band, I'll be showing you the final look of the skirt. So this is what I have, and the next and final step is to go ahead to attach zipper to this skirt. So at this point we have come to the end of today's tutorial, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and join us in our next video. Thanks.